Hello everyone and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. We're nearing the end of 2023, one of the toughest, perhaps the toughest year for Roger Waters. He made a terrible record with the Dark of the Moon Redux, so let's put some emphasis on his best work ever, Amused to Death. And I'm gonna do that today by comparing different versions of this album and trying to find out what is the best sounding version of Amused to Death. Now, for me, Amused to Death started listening to it on CD. I'm holding a CD here, not the CD, which I heard it on for the first time. At least first time in regard that I listened to this album digitally, loved it. Then I got accepted to the Dutch film school, and I studied sound design there. And our teacher had a beautiful CD and a perfect stereo setup, most expensive thing ever. And then I heard a CD of Amused to Death and I was really, really impressed. In 2015, Analogue Productions did a re-release of Amused to Death on both CD, there's a CD in here, and on Blu-Ray audio. Now, the Blu-ray audio was, for me, in 2015, the way to go with this album. But it's tough to take this one into comparison with the records that I'm going to show you in a bit. Because this is a 5.1 mix. And the 5.1 mix, it's 24-bit uncompressed. I mean, uncompressed audio, I love that. But it has a different sense. It has a different sense. And the 5.1 mix it is an audiophile treat, seriously. This album has so much atmosphere. So listening to the 5.1 mix is awesome. But can I say anything about it when comparing it to these two? To be quite frank, when we're talking about Amused to Death, I think I'm gonna go talk about the stereo one. Especially because this is a vinyl channel, mostly vinyl channel. I don't disregard CDs or Blu-ray audios, but I just prefer to listen to vinyl. I do vinyl evenings with friends, so I'm gonna compare these two. Now, after the 2015 Blu-ray audio, which I really, really enjoyed, and the 5.1 mix is really impressive, especially, you gotta have a 5.1 set, and a lot of people are getting rid of their 5.1 home cinema sets, and it's a shame. I mean, film in 5.1 is amazing, and some of these 5.1 mixes are just very interesting, and Amused to Death really gets more interesting with the 5.1 mix. Yet, in stereo, this album is also pretty awesome and genuine. And I'm holding here the Analogue Productions 2-piece vinyl release of Amused to Death. This is a beautiful edition. And this was my go-to version for a long time. It is a very strong definition on Roger Waters' vocals. What I did notice when I listened to this version, I was used to hearing the voice of HAL 9000, the computer from 2001: A Space Odyssey, in reversed order back in the days. Now, they changed that on this version. You actually hear a sample from 2001: A Space Odyssey and HAL the computer in the correct order. Now that's interesting. And there's more to this version. They changed samples. They changed certain sounds. And I'm even in doubt if certain instruments have changed. I'm not sure to what extent this version is different, but this mix by James Guthrie is more than just a new mix. There are different sounds here. And that makes it for a tough comparison, really. This is actually a different cut of the album than the original one from 1992. So, I do enjoy this pressing. It is a good, solid audiophile pressing. Perhaps somewhat on the bright side from time to time. But overall, this is an experience like you're listening to an album from 2015, or partially a 2015 album. Because of the mixing, because of the things that are different here, it doesn't feel like it's from the 90s. And that brings me to another film comparison, Star Wars. In the 90s, George Lucas made a new version of Star Wars. And I've always preferred the original versions because the pacing, the editing, the tone, it just makes more sense when you can consider it in the time it was made. At least for me it does. I understand the idea that people sometimes want to bring an album or a film into a new decade, but they'll survive on their own. And all these artistic choices that people made during a certain period, they do make you understand where this album is coming from. And when you change bits around, like George Lucas added digital effects, it doesn't feel like it's right. Something seems to be wrong. Even if you're not aware of it, it doesn't seem to make sense. The story or the narrative of the production just changes. And that what brings me to why, although the Analogue Productions version is pretty good sounding, I prefer this one, the 1992 original. Now, the sound effects and samples differ from time to time. You still have Hal's voice in reverse, obviously, because this is an original pressing from 1992. The sound is also different. The mixing is different, but the pressing and the quality is also different. There seems to be a little bit more of a sharper sound and a sharper tone to certain instruments or vocals, for example, or a piano that you hear. There's a bit more. I'm not sure if it's uncompressed because I don't assume they use a lot of compression on the Analogue Productions one, but the one seems to be a bit brighter and less harsh. The sound here seems to be more rough. This doesn't have the large stereo image like the Analogue Productions LP does. Minor difference though. But this is beautiful. This is direct. It has a nice and punchy sound. And actually I prefer the sound of the voice here. It's a little bit more direct. Now, the changes between these albums are big, yet you can always, both are good pressings. Both are good quality representations of this album. But the experience does change a bit. So my preferred choice is the original Amused To Death from 1992. And I'd like to give out a special shout out for the Blu-ray audio. Not because I prefer Blu-ray audio, but because it's a 5.1 mix that really adds something to the experience of this album. Or at least to the 2015 experience of the album. So that is my comparison. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!